Hey Dude,
The 90s Called,
with Christine Taylor and David Lascher.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Hey Dude, The 90s Called podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, David.
Hi David, I'm Christine, your other co-host.
I know who you are.
And I know who you are. We have a great show, but we should also talk about our YouTube, right? Should we, because we have a great guest who's in the waiting room.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you brought that up. I think it's dropping today. Our Hey Dude, The 90s.
So by the time you're listening to this, you'll already be able to access it. Yes, like at least a few episodes, maybe. I'm not sure.
We have to talk to iHeart about it. I think they're dropping 3 episodes per week, but all of our podcast episodes are on video, and they're going to be dropped onto iHeartMedia's brand new YouTube channel, which I think is going to be phenomenal because people have been asking us, where can we see the video? Because a lot of times our guests will hold up a picture or they'll reference what they look like or they're wearing. And you'll obviously see us in Zoom box form because that's how we do this, because we live on different coasts. Right. But you were very helpful with the iHeart team on a very colorful, eclectic, it had to be on brand. It had to be on. Yeah, you did a great job.
Our yellow, our Hey Dude, the 90s called yellow and turquoise and pink. Come on.
iHeart's going to make it look really cool and fun. And, I have to say, my new best friend is Joey McIntyre.
Oh my God.
Did you text him or no?
I didn't text him yet.
Oh, you didn't?
No, it's been a crazy busy week for me, but I thought of that today actually, because I was like, I really want to, I try when we have our guests' numbers, which we sort of like, I never want to cross.
Specifically.
Yeah, he reached out to us about the tour.
Listen, we want to invite them to a New Kids show. They're touring this summer. So I texted him. You said you were going to text him to thank him for the interview. So I did. And then we've been going back and forth. And he's sending me new music.
Oh, that's so great.
He's like, I want to see your movie. I sent him something that I directed. And
you're really new besties. I love this.
He's just such a sweetheart of a guy. And his new music is amazing.
I really, I'm going, now that you said that, I'm actually going to send him a text and thank him and just tell him, because I've gotten so much, even just from friends of mine who I don't even think listen to the podcast, but they were giant New Kids fans. We're oh my God, you fulfilled all of my childhood dreams. He is amazing. He is great. Such a sweetheart. I thought he had the best sense of humor. So I will send a message, because I won't infringe on your BFF status with him, but I will.
On my bromance? No, you can have your own thing with him.
But I also, because he's such a musical theater guy too, I gotta get my musical theater info from him of when he's coming back to Broadway and all of those.
Last week's episode was amazing. But you talk about one of your co-stars today.
I know, we've got Skeet Ulrich. I always know, I think it's Ulrich, right? But
Skeet Ulrich, yeah.
Ulrich. That's what I've always said, but some people say Ulrich. So I don't know. But anyway, he's in the waiting room. We did a movie together a million years ago that is The Craft. And a lot of people that at 90s Con talked to me about how obsessed they were with The Craft. And so I want to talk to him a little bit about that, but I want to hear everything from him. So why don't we let him in? So many good ones. All right. So why don't we let him in?
Yep. Let's welcome Skeet Ulrich.
Hey.
Oh my God. Look at you.
Stranger. Look at you. You don't ever age, do you?
Neither do you. Look at you. Oh my God. Have you guys met, David and Skeet? Have you guys ever met or worked together?
Skeet Ulrich, thank you for being on the show, by the way. This is a thrill. Our kids went to the same elementary school, and my wife rarely gets excited about our guests. Last week, I'm like, seriously, you don't know New Kids on the Block? Where were you? But she says, when I said Skeet's name, she was like, oh my God.
Aww.
Yeah. So our kids went to the same school.
How old are your kids? Were they there at the same time? Or?
It was, I have I have 2 kids in college, but it was my 14-year-old daughter, Chelsea, that went, I think, to the same school as your kid.
Yeah.
Christine, this is like this little neighborhood school.
I know it. Exactly. I used to live right there. So I know exactly where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. We used to live near each other too for a brief amount of time.
Yes. I was going to say, I think your twins came to a birthday party. I think it was like Ella's maybe second birthday. Yeah. I was just thinking about that. We were we all remember that stage where like the babies, the sort of young kids, and they don't really have friends yet. Like they have a few kids that they play with in preschool, but you're like, oh, we're going to do a birthday. Like, let's just invite our friends with kids.
Yeah, exactly.
And people we know because they're just going to do their thing. But yeah, that was a really, we found pictures of that party.
Hey.
So fun. I mean, it was a crazy, I just remember it was like all these people Ben was working with and people that and you guys were in the neighborhood. So,
yeah. And that was such a lush property. You guys had that spread on that corner. Oh my God.
Yeah. That was such a great neighborhood. That was this was up in the Hollywood Hills, David. It was sort of like, it then became a little bit of like the tour buses kind of made their rounds eventually. Like when we first moved in there, it was a much more quiet place. And then it just kind of became like, I'll never forget Jerry Stiller coming to, I think it might have been that birthday party and like ringing our doorbell outside and one of the tour buses pulled up and he started chatting and Anne is like, Jerry, don't engage. Come on. We're going to the kids. And he was just answering questions and they've got the megaphones.
Amazing.
Lifetime ago.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming and talking to us.
Thanks for having me. It's so cool. I haven't done many podcasts, to be honest. Maybe 2.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
We're so honored.
No.
Are you a listener though? Do you listen to podcasts?
I don't. I think that's why, I'm so old school. Like I don't.
I'm almost same. Like I started to listen a little more when we talked about doing this together, but I'm the same. Like Ben is a podcast nut. Like he knows it's how he gets his news. He's like literally like so dialed into like every different genre of podcast. And I am just sort of like, oh, I get in my car and I still listen to music.
I know. I listen to the radio.
Right, exactly.
You know what I love about it? And I've been listening to podcasts for a long time. And that's why I came to Christine with this. It's like, you watch someone on a late night talk show or a morning show and they have these like planned little jokes and interviews. Yeah. And this is like, we get, Christine, we've gotten to know things about people that are, we had no idea. Like some of the interviews that we didn't really know about the people become the most fascinating interviews.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly a much longer form and ability to, to connect in a way that you can't really in those shows. Yeah. I mean, I'm down. I just am, old. So.
You don't look old, man.
I don't know. I lived in this house like 19 years and it's been amazing. I build furniture. I've always kind of built furniture and now it's planting season. I have terraced gardens. So I plant all kinds of different fruits and vegetables. And
look at you. Oh my God. That's amazing. And by the way, when you live in California, like you have to take advantage of it.
Absolutely. It's the only place you have citrus in your yard.
Exactly.
It's insane. Well, maybe not the only place, but certainly,
where you can have it year round. Yes. Yeah. And that's just part of the plantings. Like you can literally pick fruit from the trees. All right. So, but you're not from California originally.
No, I was born in Virginia, in the mountains of Virginia. And then kind of raised all over until I was about 10. And then I was in North Carolina until I went to NYU.
Okay. All right.
Oh, you went to NYU?
I did.
To Tisch?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Christine and I were this close, but we didn't do it.
We ended up doing that TV show and then just not going. That's our story. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't sit here today if it wasn't for my experience there, to be honest. I was a a very Southern, let's say, kid out of a NASCAR family who had who nobody had paved the way for the arts. Arguably building engines is an art in itself, but performing arts, no one had, been in that avenue. So it was just, thank God I got in that program. And it was Mamet and William H. Macy who taught it. And they had Mamet had this thing where this was pre-internet, where you had to answer 10 questions. And it took 2 to 3 weeks for me to even find a modicum of what those answers may be. They were so obscure. And this is going to the library every day after class. I was at UNCW as a marine biology student and dying to get out. And so I did all that, 2-3 weeks of work, and then you go up and do an interview. And their whole point is that if you have the willpower to answer those questions or to even try to, you have the willpower for him to teach you how to act. And he took 16 kids.
Was this the Atlantic Theater Company?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because my son, our son just did a summer program at Tisch last summer, and he did the Atlantic
in Vermont.
No, he did it at Tisch. Yeah.
Amazing. Wow.
But they gave them the book to read. I don't think they had answered the 10 questions for this 4-week summer program.
Yeah, I think that was only then. It's not that way anymore. From what I hear with Tisch, they assign you a studio. You can't really choose.
Exactly.
I had to audition to get an NYU. They would have laughed me out of the room at that point, to be honest. So I guess my message to everybody is, if you have a dream and you set your heart to it and your mind to it, you can do things you can't even fathom.
Wait, can we just back up 1 second? Are you saying that David Mamet and William H. Macy were 2 of your teachers?
They taught acting at that time. Yeah. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. And wildly, my now co-star, Giancarlo Esposito, guest taught at that time at my class. And
wait, so you remember him coming in?
God, yeah.
He's so incredible. And I want to hear all about the new show too, but we're going to get to that.
Yeah. He was doing a play at Atlantic that he won the Obie for. And he was mesmerizing. And then, I guess because he was in the theater all the time, he guest taught a couple classes here and there. And he was just, he's a force.
Oh,
He's a force. So I've been aware of him since 91 when that play was. And,
it's just incredible. Did you ever, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but did you ever do a Mamet play?
I haven't done a Mamet play.
Okay.
Oddly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That may not have gone well. Even trying to do a scene in front of him would have been intimidating.
No, real quickly, I did Glenn Ross at a theater in West Hollywood with an amazing cast. Ian Gomez put it together. Anyway, it's like the rapid fire dialogue, if somebody messes up, it's like a domino, my gosh, what do we do now? It was the scariest thing I've ever done. But I can't imagine learning acting at that age from David Mamet. How incredible.
Yeah. He had, they set us up in such a great way in the theater training. Liz Himmelstein was our speech teacher. She's almost thanked at every Oscar. She's a dialect coach. For Nicole Kidman, Naomi Watts, Sam Rockwell, you name it. But she was, a theatrical voice teacher at the time.
It sounds like it was worth the price of tuition.
It was definitely worth it. Yeah. Yeah. And I owe my stepdad a thank you, a big thank you, which I give to him almost daily. He's like, all right, I've heard it enough. Shut up.
Oh, no, the gratitude, man. That's good.
Yeah.
But that's amazing for you to figure out, to go from, growing up the way you did, ending up in college, going into science. And then what made you pivot? Did you see plays, or were you always just interested in film and television? What made you make that decision for yourself?
I think a couple of things. I remember as a freshman, I wound up, a PA came into the dorm, and I happened to be coming in at the same time, and they were looking for extras for Weekend at Bernie's, which I was in Wilmington, North Carolina. And
No, stop it. No.
And I was like, what do you mean? What does this do? What do you do? And they're like, well, give me $50. And I was like, sold. What do I do? Because I didn't really have much money. At 50 was a lot.
Of course.
So I was like, all right. And then I got kind of interested in it, I was in those party scenes at that house and shit.
Oh, wait, so you were in Weekend at Bernie's as an extra?
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Big hoop earrings in.
No. Such a classic. Such a classic, that movie.
Such a classic. And then I did a couple other things, but in the same time, in terms of school, I realized I was like cheating on my botany tests and stuff like that. And I was like, maybe this isn't for me. And I had always kind of built things. So I took a set design class. And part of that was building sets for that theater. And in doing that and, watching the plays and striking the sets, I'd slowly it hit me. I remember standing on stage. They have this big proscenium theater there, and I remember standing on the edge, and it was empty, and we had struck the set, and I went, oh, they have to listen. And it was like the first time, and then the power of metaphor, of all those things I was never able to tell anybody, and I had a pretty chaotic childhood and life at that point, and I was like, man, I can use those words to say, and no one will know what I'm really saying.
But I get to express it, right?
Yeah,
I get to just put it out there.
Power of subtext in what we do. And I think, that's a whole other thing.
I know, but also what you studied at NYU, that Meisner technique is taking things from your own life and using it for your character.
Yeah,
right.
That magic as if.
The as if. That's what Quinn did all summer. He goes, I have to do an as if. Mom, I have to do an as if. Yes. He's going to die when I tell him this. He's going to be like, oh my God.
It's wild.
It works.
It really
when
is.
it clicked for him too, I remember when it clicked, it was like the aha moment of oh my God. I so get this now.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, he was just overthinking. You know what I mean? It was like trying to do it so technically that it was like, no, let's just forget. He had a great teacher too, but not Mamet or Macy. But
it's once in a lifetime, obviously. But there are people equally as good. I'm sure they're not. They're just such. I think. All of it has value, some people learn by doing and being on set and being under the pressure of that. And some people learn in a different way. So it's, there is no right or wrong. And I think you ultimately learn that as a performer, as even in scenes and lines and everything, there's no right or wrong,
Right. And it's what works for you. What is the truest for you?
Yeah.
So you go through 4 years. You went all 4 years?
I went 3.
3? Okay. And then right to LA?
No, I had been I did a little play, we did plays obviously at school and stuff. And a friend of a friend came, and she was like a casting assistant to, was it Julianne Taylor that was the big one at that? I can't remember all the Juliette Taylor.
Yeah.
Right? She was so she was like an assistant to her, and this woman's name is Aline Kashishian, who is now one of the most incredible managers on the planet. And anyway, she asked me to come audition, and then she was slowly pivoting into ICM to become an agent, and then it just sort of evolved that we had wound up with a working relationship. And I got an audition for an after school special that I got, and that
that dates us all.
I was going to say that really tells our age right there.
Right there. Welcome to the 90s. And that parlayed into that director wound up directing the first film I did. She had it lined up, and Winona Ryder was in it, and Lucas Haas, and John C. Reilly, and
What was that?
It was called Boys.
Right.
Oh yes, yeah.
And I went down to do. She asked me to, I didn't really have a part in it. She was like, I really like, working with you and this and that. And like, maybe come down to Baltimore where we're shooting. You can, do the table read. And I want you to play this one, cop who has like, 3 or 4 lines or something. And I was like, sure, great. And they were trying to make a deal with, I can't remember who it was, Vigo or Brad or somebody big for this one part. So that had not been done by the time the table read happened. So they said, will you read this part? And I was like, yeah. And Winona and I like sparked in the read through and all this stuff. And at the end of the read through, they asked me to play that part, which was much more substantial.
And this was all Juliet Taylor advocating for you.
That was not Juliet Taylor at all. That was unrelated. That sort of went away. I mean, that was Billy Bathgate was that audition. And,
yes, right.
And it did. Obviously, I didn't get it. Lauren Dean did, but
right.
But yeah, that was, this was many months after that, and doing an after school special, and then sort of rolling into this, director's next project, and
right.
And things just happened, and I was so horrible and so nervous, and but
I know, but people saw something in you, whether it was Juliet or that director in the after school special. Like we, as actors, you always need some sort of like mentors to to give you that push. I mean, we've talked to so many actors about that they can look back and they can pinpoint 1 or 2 people that made all the difference for them. In the early days.
Absolutely. I think there were several. I mean, it seemed like every teacher in that program had something to offer that was just like, oh, wow. And, I was so green and untrained, and that they almost really favored that, not as a teacher's pet kind of thing, but because I didn't have any tricks. I didn't have anything to unlearn,
Right.
So I was such a sponge for it. And, but in terms of work stuff, I don't know, it just, it seemed like if you came out of New York theater at that time, when you got to LA, you were instantly put on a pedestal, and, given some chances that others may not be given.
Right. There was a respect.
Yeah, there really was. And I'm sure there still is. I mean, it's, but yeah, what a time.
So what year was Boys?
Boys must have been, I graduated in 93. So we must have shot it in 94, 90. Yeah.
Okay. So Winona at that point was huge, right? And so how was that experience? Like you said, you'd done the after school special, and you'd done your weekend at Bernie's. But like, how did that feel, stepping into this role with this huge movie star who was like, literally the biggest.
She was at that time. My God, she was in every movie.
It was terrifying. I mean, she's so charming and beautiful, and and she had this thing that honestly, I don't know that I've seen it since. And I've worked with a lot of great actresses, yourself included, who there was this light that went on when they said rolling, and it just, something sparks inside of her when it's that moment. And it was, and like the first take I had with her, I got lost. It happened, and I had the first line, and I was like,
you were watching her. You were like admiring her performance.
Yeah, and it was supposed to be the opposite, where I'm like this pro baseball player. She's this small town girl. I wind up getting her drunk, and we're popping pills. And then I crashed the car into this lake, and I die and she lives. And that becomes the secret she's hiding all the way through, whatever. But it was the opposite. I was the one sort of like, she should have been looking at me the way I was looking at her. But yeah, I don't know. It was just, I mean, it was really, I was very nervous, and I mean, I got through it, and it is what it is, but it was, it was not easy. We had another scene like that first day, and we shot her side, and then we turn around and it's in the car, and I look over and she's just eating a sandwich off camera, and I'm like
so chill, just doing it right.
Wow.
Everything. I mean, that's how we all learn, though. Obviously you had great teachers at NYU, but you get on set and there are directors and other actors that you absorb their experience.
Yeah. It was a big learning moment. And then I don't think I worked for somewhere between 6 months and 12 months, maybe a little longer to get my next project. And
what was that The Craft?
No,
right after that?
It was Bruce Beresford who won an Oscar for Tender Mercies. It was Sharon Stone's Dead Man Walking, called Last Dance. She was on death row. I played her brother.
Oh my gosh!
Right.
And Randy Quaid, and I mean, it was really an interesting piece, and there was a lot of emotional requirements for it, because this is my sister being dragged to the electric chair and all this shit. And it was quite the experience. But then during filming that, we were in Nashville at that point, and Robin Tunney, who I had known from New York, got in touch with me and was like, there's this script I think you'd be great for, and they want to meet you. And it was crazy. Then all of a sudden I was on a plane and to LA, and I get there, they pick me up, they take me right to Doug Wick's house, the producer.
Right.
Robin's there, and I'm like, oh my God, this is what auditioning out here is like. You go to this mansion and
welcome to LA.
Sit on a couch and you chill with people.
Chats and everybody's on your team, and I was like, wow. And then that obviously happened, but that was my.
What is it? You're talking about The Craft that you guys did together?
Yeah.
All right, you guys got to tell me about that, because how was that experience?
Yeah, well, I wanted to hear that. I had no idea that was how it went for you. I was going to ask you if it was something you had auditioned for a million times, or how that happened.
It was just sort of Robin's, inclination and intuition, and her, kind of putting it together and giving me a shot, and
right.
Worked out. I had to audition with Robin in front of the producer, and Andy was there as well.
Yeah.
So, but what an entree. I didn't have to, you think about it now, it's for Parish, my daughter and I made a tape in my kitchen, and you think, oh, wow, who knows if anyone's ever even going to see this?
Right. I know. Isn't it crazy now? I know. I feel like my memory of The Craft, because I had just done the Brady Bunch movie and I auditioned for Robin's part.
Yeah.
I just remember day one. I don't even know. I mean, it was at that school that we shot at, and I don't know that you and I had a scene together, but I met you because our trailers were right next to each other, and you had, and I don't even know if you remember this, a VHS copy of the movie Swimming with Sharks. You had just gotten a screener of it or something.
Oh, wow.
And you were like, and I don't know what your connection to it was at all, but I just remember you saying I got this movie that I'm going to watch. Do you want to come in? And I remember us watching that movie together while we were killing time. And that was the first time I met you.
I would not remember that. Now I will never forget it.
Right.
I had just auditioned for Kevin, and I wound up doing Albino Alligator right after that.
Right, that's what it was.
It's the Kevin Spacey movie where Frank Whaley plays the assistant. Yeah, it's classic Hollywood.
Yep.
Amazing movie.
And you had your VHS again, dating us.
Dating us. Gosh, stop doing that.
Worked in trailers.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, The Craft, who knew? I remember Andy saying to me there's this part, she's horrible, but we loved you in the Brady Bunch. I would love for you to play it. She's an awful human being. She is every bad thing you could imagine. And I was like, I would do anything to be in this movie. Like and it was so much fun. The limited time that I was there. And I gotta tell you, and I know for a fact, because David and I just did our first convention, like 90s Con last week.
Yeah.
The amount of craft posters, and I saw your name tattooed on a girl's arm that I had to sign a piece of paper for, that was going like right next to Rachel True's tattoo on her arm that she has the entire cast. Yeah. Yes. And I kept thinking to myself, she's really like in 20 years going to be so bummed that she just has all of our names.
It's not, man. It's wild though, because we do them for Scream. We go to these conventions a lot. But, I mean, they are still rabid for both. And yeah, you see that a lot. Tattooed.
Christine, some girl had a picture of you with your hair falling out. She took. I was horrified. I was like,
what is tattooed on her?
No, thank God, no.
Oh my goodness.
When the spell gets cast on me and the hair starts coming out, she screenshotted something on her TV and blew it up. So because that's not a picture that's circulated often. So that was, and she told me
allow such things.
But she told me that you took a picture of it with your phone to use.
I probably did.
Oh, I did to show you and say, "What the hell is this?"
Yes, no, it was sad at that point. It was like she had really got, the character that I played was awful, and but that was a blast. And so was that sort of for you? Like, did that change things? Because I feel like the craft it became more of a cult following, but it wasn't like a massive box office success.
Well, it opened number one.
Or was it? Was it?
It opened number one. I don't know. I can't tell you much past that, but we were shooting Scream when it opened, Neve and I. And so we got to celebrate it opening number one.
That is crazy.
Oh, that's so cool.
So you went right into Scream. Albino Alligator?
And then I did my first lead, which was Chris Walken and I and Bridget Fonda, an Elmore Leonard script that Paul Schrader directed called Touch. And I played the second coming of Christ in modern day LA, this dark comedy.
Well, you said Bonfire of the Vanities?
No, not Bonfire of the Vanities.
Touch.
It's called Touch.
Touch. Yeah. How was working with Chris?
It was odd. I mean, it was amazing. He's incredible. And I had so many wild, fun, cool moments and stories. And after the first couple of days, Paul Schrader came to me and he was like, "You got to stop imitating him in takes." I was like, "I am?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Come watch." And I was like, "Oh
no.
I didn't need to be."
It's so tempting to imitate him, though.
Yeah. So, but we had a great time. I'll never forget. Like, I had to pee one time and I was leaving set and his trailer was closest and I knocked on his door. I was like, "Chris, can I use your bathroom?" And he's like, "Yeah, come in." And I go in and he's sitting at the vanity with an uncut, unscaled fish. And I was like, What are you doing? He's like, "Having lunch."
What an eccentric man. Oh my goodness.
Oh God. It probably smelled great in there too.
Yeah.
Fish in a trailer is
but it was incredible. That was and then I left, once we finished that, then I did Scream.
All right. So that had to have been completely life-changing.
That's the one.
That was, it was wild. I had, it was just such an interesting time. And I had, doing Kevin Spacey's movie, Faye Dunaway played my mom. And, it was Matt Dillon who was just.
Oh my God. You worked with
Seriously, can we just say that thank goodness you didn't get some pilot for the CW that went for 7 years. The people, your path is really incredible. The projects that you got, the universe was telling you, you're going to work with great people.
It was really, I feel blessed, I guess is probably the right way to describe it. And incredibly lucky to be able to stand toe to toe with some of the great, performers,
and learn from them. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, that was certainly one of them. And, Viggo Mortensen's in that, and Gary Sinise and Matt Dillon and John Spencer and Faye. And I mean, it just went on, the cast, Bill Fichtner, just incredible performers. And then to, go to Touch and the same thing, and then Scream, like, was just,
kids, all cool. Like, how did that feel to just be doing something with sort of peers that was just seemingly like a total blast?
It was incredible. It was my first bad guy, like I had, I guess, arguably Chris Hooker's not.
He wasn't the best, right?
But for most of that, I'm like in this spell, and I'm this doe-eyed, like lovelorn guy.
Yeah,
he's not exactly a hero,
right?
But arguably my first real villain, and I was so excited. And I remember I had, press was starting to happen and stuff like that, and I had an interview with Interview Magazine over the phone. And, we were talking about some of those films that were starting to come out and stuff. And they were asking what I was doing next. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm going to play this serial killer. And then after the conversation.
Oh no, you gave away the plot.
I called my publicist. I was like, you got to call them right now. You got to call them right now.
The biggest spoiler of all time.
Wes Craven's would have killed you.
I would have been shot on set, but they got a whole, and they were like, oh my God, yeah, obviously we won't run that, But man, that's how excited I was to to play that part and to get to dive into that sort of menace, hidden menace. And an extraordinary experience. Like, I mean, Courtney was obviously massive at the time, and still is, with Friends. And Neve had Party of Five, which was, and The Craft subsequently coming out and stuff. So she was, but the rest of, Drew obviously had a career already, but the rest of us were kind of unknown, like untapped, and like, and horror was kind of dead at the time. And Wes's couple movies prior to that had not done great. And, there was, in fact, Marianne Magdalena told me many years later that they had Miramax had pulled the plug on it after they shot all Drew's stuff first, and they pulled the plug on it. And we're like, we don't get this. We're not going to risk this. We don't.
What, dude? That opening of Scream with Drew getting it's how could you not
dailies. They were just looking at dailies. So Wes and Kathy Conrad and Marianne rushed together, and you're talking days. There's no digital. Had to cut the beginning together in a rush and rushed it to New York, and they watched it cut together, and they were like, oh, okay, all right, now
okay.
But you're right. I mean, horror, as a horror movie fan growing up, because I loved the original Nightmare on Elm Street, and those that I just remember when Scream was going, because I auditioned for that too. Of course, I was dying to be in that movie.
For what? Which role? The Drew
role?
The
Neve part. For the Neve part.
Okay.
But I remember just thinking this, when I read it, this is so smart. This is literally it's because it's a nod to all of it's just brilliantly written, and it's going to be huge. And it literally changed. I mean, it brought horror back to the, mainstream.
It's wild. There's something about Wes's understanding of that. I mean, and the only reason I say it's now, God, almost 30 years later, 28 years later, whatever it is. And the fact that people still line up around the block, every city we go to have, and I'm talking, it has spanned generations. Now, you see 8 to 12-year-olds who are screaming, dressed up as Ghostface. And granted, that's been handed down to them, but they're still, it keeps going. And it's, the only thing you can sort of think, because when does that ever happen, is that Wes was on to something. And the only thing I can surmise from my experience with him is he knew, and he elaborated on a few times about, if you can get people laughing, you open them up just enough to scare the shit out of them.
Oh, that's so good. That is so good.
And it's so true, because you get them vulnerable and then boom. And so that mix of comedy and horror that is Scream is, I think he had been fine tuning that for a while.
And I read something that initially you didn't see the comedy in it. Is that true?
What I was trying to explain to that person was that, to that journalist, was that as an actor, I put myself in the mindset that this was a documentary about two killers, so that I could step into that rawness and sort of, and I'm a massive John Cassavetes fan. So I like sort of, odd angles and wide shots and physical, bodies moving through space. So I just was in that mindset. I definitely knew that, obviously, the humor inside of it, but Billy is not playing anything funny.
Exactly.
So
no, that's what I was going to say, for you to play it the way you played it. But then there's Matt Lillard, who is like...
And was it and Jamie Kennedy?
Right.
And Jamie Kennedy,
yeah, I'll be right back. Right. Yeah.
So that's what I meant by that. I definitely was aware of it, but I was more focused in trying to play Billy.
So great. Can we talk about As Good as It Gets? Because I mean, one of my favorite movies. Tell us about that experience.
Again, going into
seriously, it's ridiculous.
Jim Brooks, the cast. I mean,
oh my God,
Jack. I mean, come on. I spent 7 months on that movie. I had a bunch of scenes hit the editing floor. His first cut was 5 hours long, and he had to lose a bunch of stuff, which included, more of a budding relationship between Greg Kinnear and my character, and some stuff at the beginning where initially I get picked up off the street. They take me to an art party where I, much like the character would do, start change the music and start doing a strict tease in the middle of all these elite wine drinking art fans. And then the original ending was Jack coming, they track me down on the streets, and they send Jack out, because I'd not seen him, I don't know him, to lure me back to the car and get me arrested. And his opening line in that scene is, I'd like to purchase a blowjob.
Oh, how did that not make it in the movie?
Here's the wild thing is, Jim was so upset that this had to happen this way. He gave me that painting, which is a whole nother wild story about my fandom of that artist, and he happened to be the artist who painted it. And anyway, I gave it to my mom. She's had it forever. But he gave me, a VHS of some of the outtakes of some of the scenes that were cut out. And I had not, until 4 months ago, had it digitized. And so I hadn't watched it. And you watch it now and you're like, man, yeah, I see that would not have fit at all. In what we know of As Good as It Gets to Be. I was like, yeah, no, you couldn't put that in there. That wouldn't work,
But, the relationship between you and Greg Kinnear, while it, was not the lead part of the story, you guys connecting. And then there's a moment where he looks at you like, you're robbing me. And you have this moment of guilt and shame. And then your boys beat the crap out of him. It's so effective. And it's the parts of the movie that I remember. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, such an incredible experience. Jim is just, it's next level. And it's this artistry and this empathy. There are not enough positive adjectives to describe that man. And going all the way back to Taxi, I had heard, and now having worked with him fully, know, like you can hear him laughing. And they couldn't
in
get
Taxi
quiet to, like, yeah, he's off camera, and but he can't help but laugh, and there's no way to mix it out of some of the stuff they were doing because it happens so much. So I mean, and that's how he was. He was just so, like, in the moment with each and every character, and just such an incredible inspiration of a man. And there was a thing that happened in rehearsals that I thought just summed up the power of Jack Nicholson and how he works and what he thinks about. But he said, here, I'll put this here. He said, I've been thinking about playing old. And I think the key is to treat every object in the room as if it's the age you want to be. So if this glass is 90 years old, I want to be careful not to disturb the dust around it because it might just crumble. And we were like, and you watched him just sort of physically age right there, but his attention's outside of himself. And Jim Brooks was like, that is genius, Jack. Like, I mean, you have to tell people about that. And he's like, well, then they'd know what I was doing.
It's his secret sauce.
But I got instantly that this is a guy who spends 24/7 thinking about how to bring reality to the screen. And that's why he's Jack Nicholson. It's not by accident. He is a working actor, like working.
Right.
Whether he's working or not, he's working.
I think that's one of his most powerful human performances. Because, there's a Few Good Men and The Shining. He plays these, over the top characters. But in As Good as It Gets, he plays just a obsessive, compulsive, angry, lonely man. I think it's one of his best roles.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes. And I just showed our daughter Terms of Endearment, fairly recently. And that's another one of his best performances. Yeah. And that's a Jim Brooks movie. Like, it's like, hearing that is amazing to imagine. And what a gift to be able to just be and have that experience. Like, I imagine you left a better actor, a better performer,
a better person.
I've got a lot to learn. Like, I've got a lot to learn. I mean, that's one thing about, I've been blessed to work with some of the best, but each and every time you're like, you do learn, but you're like, oh my God, how do I get there? Like, how do I get there? And they make you better, they're like, just the power of the moment, and I probably one of the highlights of my career was getting a call from Gary Oldman he asked me to do a movie with him, and we wound up making that movie, and we had the most incredible time together, and he's just such a phenomenal, obviously, talent. He has been forever. He said this thing to me near the end. He was like, you know what I like about working with you? And I was like, what?
Please tell me.
Let me record it. Hang on.
I'll remember it forever.
And he said, no, we were both in some, stressful relationships at the time. And he said, no matter what's going on in your life, you put the character's emotions first and you adapt to that. If you're upset, you don't come in and suddenly the character's upset. You're able to adapt to what's needed by the character. And I was like, oh my God, like forever. Like,
incredible compliment from he's such a master. So
and it was the wildest thing, because when I met him, he was doing The Contender, and I was living on a farm in Virginia at the time, and he was working in Richmond, which was like an hour and a half drive from me. So he was like, well, come over to lunch, whatever. So I drove over, and he was that curly-headed senator with the Northeastern accent and all this stuff. And like, we had lunch and whatever, and cut to 2 months later, I see him in, Utah. He started in Moab, Utah with us. And it was 180 degrees from the guy I met. I couldn't believe it. It seemed seamless. And I kept thinking like, how does he like, does he have like a room in the house that's, you know, he has a makeup artist that lives in that room and like, he can, like, you know, try this and this and this. And then he's got a wardrobe person over there and he like has a closets and closets full of shit to try and like work it out. It's gotta be. I mean, it's got to be.
Because how else, right?
I mean, it's just phenomenal. His abilities, like truly.
That kind of compliment coming from him. I mean, that goes back to your NYU days and your childhood, which you said you are able to go into a character and recall some stuff and apply it. And he saw that in you, which is so cool.
It's wild. I truly like so wild. And I mean, just, yeah, he was just the sweetest, like the most fun to work with. Yeah.
Well, my daughter, I showed her who I was interviewing today, aside from my wife having a huge crush on you, but she was like, oh my God, he's on Riverdale.
Yeah.
And I did a show called Sabrina the Teenage Witch for a number of years, and which is also an Archie comic character.
Yeah.
And they, you know, it was a very like positive version of the show. They went and tried to remake it as this really dark, sinister kind of thing. Yeah. And I believe that's what Riverdale took these really happy, you know, positive characters and turned it into something very dark.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they did. Yeah. I don't know. You know that world well enough to know what was true source material and what was extrapolated upon, you know, in terms of Roberto.
I don't want to. I was a comic book collector when I was a kid, and I mean, I have Archie comics that are 5 cents in plastic.
Wow!
In my garage. So yeah, I know all the characters. You played Jughead's father on the show.
Who I don't think was a massive part of the comics, if I'm not mistaken.
He was Archie's best friend, and it was Betty
was his dad. Was his dad much in there?
Oh. No. I remember Veronica's dad was the rich guy. Right. I don't remember Jughead's dad, but what was your character and how was that experience?
He was a alcoholic biker gang leader.
Oh, jeez.
Of a gang called the Serpents. He didn't really give a damn about his son. And then the evolution was him becoming, you know, a true father and reforming and becoming sheriff by season 3 or 4. It was a wild arc, but you know, the first season I thought was so phenomenal and like so real and like intriguing and kind of a really interesting murder mystery. And you know, it hit the zeitgeist in a way nothing I had done really. I mean, Scream was a different time. You know, that was when you'd get in the 90s, you knew you had sort of made it if you had good box office. And how many garbage bags full of handwritten fan mail did you get?
Right.
There were no message boards. There was no social media, obviously, any of that thing. And now all of a sudden, you know, you look at Riverdale and it was like, according to Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, it was the number 1 talked about show for 3 straight years in the world. And so it hit this thing and I couldn't help but think like, why? And my kids were, you know, this was the first job I took outside of LA from the time they were born until they were 15. And this was, you know, the start of that show. And I was
where did you film?
Vancouver.
Okay.
Doing like 4 flights a week, back and forth. But what I saw was like, you know, in that story or what I felt was that it really, the parents' part of that story and the way they wrote it so amazingly, it showed kids that parents have flaws and they're at that tender age where they're starting to be able to accept that or to see, like in those relationships that were in Riverdale with the parents and the kids, like I recognize that my dad has that issue or my mom has that issue and it really gave a voice to, I think, and again, this is all me surmising things, but I think that was part of the allure of it was this, you know, ability for kids to latch on to that
Especially at that age, like what you were saying, when kids stop sort of idolizing the parent and looking at everything they know and believe to be what you know and believe, you're starting to form your own opinions as a kid and seeing these flawed humans, right? So that's really interesting. Yeah.
I think that had a lot. I think it had something to do with it. And then, of course, there's Cole Sprouse. So, like, he is the greatest dude, I have to tell you. And like, we have remained good friends. And like, it was, I think the blessing of that show was meeting him. And I just think the world of him. He's so smart. He went to NYU for like anthropology and was doing digs in Africa and had left the business. And then decided, maybe this is for me. Let me try again. But he's just such an incredible, fascinating man.
And very, very talented. He's so good. And every, when you see these kid actors and what they then become and like how people accept them, and he's really sort of paved his own way. He's really, really good.
Yeah. And he's just got he's got a heart of gold. So, But it was an incredible show. Like, I mean, it was a roller coaster of like, sometimes, I mean, I was like 12th on the call sheet or something. So sometimes I'd take these flights up and I'd stand in the background, then I'd fly home and like, and then I'd fly up and say one word and come home. And like, and it just started wearing me out that I was doing all this travel and it wasn't really necessarily developing. And I was in a renegotiation year and was looking to do other things. And so I left it like after 4 seasons, but.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point you bring up that, it's like the antithesis to the Full House, perfect family kind of show, which, I know people take comfort in, but it might make them feel like, oh my God, my life's not like this.
Yeah.
It's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Skeet, let me ask you something. Have you ever, just listening to you talk about, you mentioned Cassavetes, like, have you ever directed? Is that something?
I did. I made a short for my daughter who is an actress and, has been most of her growing up on sets. She had no choice really, although my son went a completely different direction. That's her twin brother. And, I wanted to show her what it was like and the demands of it, because she wanted to do it as a kid. And I never wanted, I was offered doing plays at Yada and plays around, at school and all that stuff. But not the business part of it. Like, I don't know. So we made this short. We won the Williamsburg Film Festival in Brooklyn. She won.
Oh, wow.
It's a long short. It's like 23 minutes long, which we didn't make it for like the festival circuit or anything, but some people, liked it and were like, you should submit it here and do this and that. And it did really well. It was sort of amusing. My daughter used to go up on this roof and do her homework, and you can't really see any houses around me at all. But when you get on the roof, you can see straight to my neighbor's front door. And she came down and she was like, maybe 11 or something. And, and we're sitting at dinner and I was like, what would you do if you like looked over and saw somebody breaking in the neighbor's house? And then he looked back and saw you. And then it became this sort of idea of like, oh, that's a great kickoff for this and this and this and this. And it was fun. We shot it in 5 days for like $5,000. And I had friends who had a couple Red cameras that came over and, shot, and a buddy who was a sound mixer, and, and Lenny James, who I had done Jericho with, played this robber who really becomes the hero of the story. So I called in a bunch of favors and we just had a good time. And I shot it very Cassavetes style, these long lingering wides, or Altman style as well, and then just flowing in from one space to the next. And wish I had much more expensive toys the entire time.
Right.
Wait, is there any way where we can see this?
I could personally send it to you.
It's okay.
On one of my Dropbox things or whatever. I don't know, one of those apps somewhere. I'll find it.
I'd love to see that, man. But there's a new show that we want to talk about.
Yeah, it comes out Sunday on AMC.
Great.
And this is Parish, right? This is the
Yeah.
Giancarlo. Oh, wait, so let's to come full circle.
Yeah.
Is this the first time you have seen or worked with him since he guest taught your class?
I ran into him on an airplane coming back from Albuquerque. We had been working in Albuquerque and coming back to LA, and he remembered me and was like, I've been following you and you're doing so great and blah blah blah. He was such a sweetheart.
Oh, he was probably doing either Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, right?
Yeah, I think it was Better Call Saul at that point, if I'm not mistaken. And we wound up sitting beside each other and talking the entire way back, and about all kinds of different stuff, from meditation and transcendental meditation, and Joe Dispenza, who he's a big, proponent of and follower of. And he sent me a book about him. And then, we sort of kept loosely in touch, but not really. And then this thing came along, and I didn't say a word to him. I never hit him up, nothing. I was just like, I'm going to put myself on tape and see what happens. And they responded to it. And then I didn't see him until we were in New Orleans, in pre-production. But
what a great life moment. It's so amazing to look back to whatever your 19-year-old self to now. And just tell us a little bit about the show. And
it's really fascinating. He plays a man who a year prior to the story starting, his 19-year-old was murdered in one of the wards in New Orleans. And it's a story about a man going through grief and Great Depression because of that. And his business is falling apart. He's got a small, black car limousine car service around New Orleans with 6 or 8 cars, small, but it's falling apart. He can't get the loan to save it. His marriage of forever is falling apart. They're going to have to sell the house. His daughter's at odds with them. And then one night, his old partner, when they used to do crimes together, he had left the crime world 20 years prior, but his partner did 17 years in the toughest prison in the U.S., Angola, for the crimes they had done together. Never ratted him out, nothing. And he's been out a year and gets himself in a situation where he could get killed, and comes to his old friend for help. And Giancarlo's character gets lured back into the criminal world. And
oh my God, this sounds good.
I play that friend who's like a crazy Cajun, which is the most fun accent on the planet in my mind.
My daughter's at school in New Orleans. She goes to Tulane, and my wife went to Tulane. We spend a lot of time there. But what an interesting place to shoot. My God, that must be so fun.
It was. I mean, it's, as you know, it's a dangerous place. And when we were there, I don't know if it is still, but this was in 22. It was the murder cap, and so we were very aware. And you just got to be careful where you go and when. But
to me, it's the food, music, culture capital of the world. I look at all the good stuff there,
Oh, you're right. I shouldn't label it in that way, because you are right. I didn't
know that.
Ways that it is the best food, the nicest people, the greatest music, the architecture, the history.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You're right. I shouldn't stick it with that.
No, it is. Let's go on Bourbon Street.
Both can be true. Both can be true. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, where does the show air?
On AMC.
Oh, AMC. Okay.
Plus, it's a week at a time. We shot 6 episodes, and hopefully we'll do more. But
great. A week at a time. You make them wait, like old school.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll just wait to binge it.
That's true. That is true, right?
12 people watched the first episode.
No, people will watch the first, and then they'll say, we're going to save, to be able to, right?
Probably it too.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see amazing. You and the two of you together. And what a great story.
Oh yeah,
so cool.
It was a blast. Maybe we'll talk more about it another time, but it has a whole set of other stories that were just life-changing as well. But yeah. I love that man, Giancarlo. He is truly one of the most talented, but also one of the most gracious, full, loving person on the planet. Yeah.
He's so good. I mean, as a Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul fan, it's like the second he steps on screen, and he's in everything. He's been around for like you're saying, like he's been around doing this for so long, and he kind of doesn't age either. I feel like he looks so good. He's been around forever and he still looks the same.
Swims every morning, work or not. Like he swims, yoga, meditation, like he is on it. And
it's the key.
Of course.
It's a good role model, good teacher, man.
Yes.
Good mentor that you have. But dude, this was awesome. I mean, thank you so much for taking on this journey.
So like this, I want to give you a hug through the screen. Next time, we say this all the time with friends of ours that we've had on, but next time we're in LA, I'd love to say hi and give you a squeeze. Yeah.
Yes, please do. Mm-hmm. Thank you guys. Thanks so much for having me on. And
yeah, your third podcast. It wasn't that bad, right?
It's awesome.
It went by like that. Yeah. Thank you, Skeet.
It was really fun, and you guys are amazing. So thanks for your time. And
the best. You're the best.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you, buddy.
Bye.
I mean, really, what can you say? What a great guy, right?
That was amazing I like only having worked with him when we were kids, like literally like early 20s when we did the craft, and he was so on the rise. I remember that, and just knowing him a little bit, like I had no idea the sort of depth of his story. And I mean, his real love of the craft, like no pun intended, not the movie The Craft, but the way he talks about acting and performing, and the way he sees characters, and I mean, he's just worked with some of the like all-time greats.
Yes, I gotta say,
like, what an amazing career.
You started NYU, and David Mamet and Bill Macy are your teachers, and then the movies that he got, one after the other. I mean, it reminded me of like Bonnie Hunt, who went and auditioned for Rain Man and then just kept working with the greatest people in the industry. Like some people, I don't know, they have that path where they just do the most amazing quality project after project. And
yes. Great directors, great actors he worked with. And what a cool career. And I always love to hear, like, even the way you just talked about being 12th on the call sheet and going to do Riverdale, and like making that commitment at that time in his life to kind of, leave town and try something different. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then after 4 years realizing like that, okay, that ran its course, but like, that sort of lack of ego of just, it doesn't matter if there's something cool to work on with interesting people. That's a character you haven't played. Like, it doesn't matter where you fall on the call sheet. Like, I don't know. I think that's pretty great. I love didn't watch Riverdale,
but I obviously was aware of it. But my kids, they even Hannah, who's home for spring break, she's 21. She looked at his picture. She's like, oh my gosh, the dad on Riverdale.
Yeah, exactly. That's what Ella watched that first season. I remember the season he talked about, this murder mystery season, where it was like, I just remember that's all Ella talked. They were so upset. Yeah, she and her friends. Yeah.
The biggest thing. But you know who I think was the other dad? I think Archie's dad was played by Luke Perry.
Yes, exactly. Right? Yes. That was so great. Thanks for listening, everybody. Come on back next week.
Yeah, we have a good one next week, and I hope you enjoyed Skeet Ulrich. Have a great week.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to subscribe and give us 5 stars.
And please follow us on Instagram at HeyDude, the 90s Called. See you next time.